Hey, this is Ramon, Channels Alpha 4, and this is part of my Bible study. This is chapter 23 of Genesis. Abraham purchases a burial plot for Sarah. That is also the recap, because that's really all that happens here, is that Abraham purchased a burial plot for Sarah. So, the reason for the insistence on purchasing the burial plot and not just receiving it as a gift, and the reason why the language in this chapter changes from a prose language into a legal language, is that burial gave ancient people rights to the land that their buried ancestors were in. So burial was a way of claiming territory. I know that might seem a little grave to us, but it's a way of claiming land. And also this oral tradition could be used as a proof that the land was legally theirs, meaning the Hebrews, and that are the Israelites, and that they were just reclaiming it, and that they were not just conquering it from the later Canaanites. So this story is partially here, so that way when they are arguing either with themselves or with their neighbors about the land that they are occupying, they can say that we are not occupying this land. We legally bought this from your ancestors. Not only do we own a well here, our ancestors are buried here, which gives us land rights. And not only do we have that, but we also have water rights. So they're building a case for them, a legal case for them having a deed to the land. And this here, the deed is their ancestors are buried there. And that was a common practice among ancient people. Also, Abraham had 3 wives, Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah. Now, Keturah could also be thought of as a concubine, depending on your translation. But wife works fine. It is interesting to note that Ishmael and Jacob both had 12 sons. And this shows that at the time of this writing, at the time that this story was either orally spoken for the first time or written down for the first time, is that Israel saw the Ishmaelites and Ishmael's descendants as their main rival. So their main rival were not the Canaanites, their main rival were not the Babylonians, their main rival were not the Egyptians, their main rivals were not even the Greeks or the Romans. At the time of this writing, at the composition of this story, whether oral or written or whatever, what else there other than writing and oral, is that sung maybe, is that they saw the Ishmaelites and the Ishmaelite descendants as their main rival. So that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, so it's not the Philistines here, it's the Ishmaelites that they are competing with. And it's also to note that Keturah had 6 sons, and I think Ishau had 5. That's the chapter. My question would be this, okay? I'm an American. So think about how we claim our land and the history of conquest. Would a story like this help us digest what we did to the Native Americans, which is, some part of my ancestry? For instance, the Viking story. Is it possible that the Viking story of them coming over to Newfoundland, which has nothing to do with the Caribbean or nothing to do with South America, but does that story help alleviate white guilt by you saying, oh, my ancestors didn't come here to conquer all these lands and Indians. They came to the north where they were peaceful. Which, by the way, the Vikings up in the north were not peaceful with the Indians. Okay? They were not peaceful. They were warlike people. Just make that clear. Does that story help? And if there was some context for the Pilgrims, or some context for the Spaniards who came over with Christopher Columbus, if there was some context for even Cortez, that a previous ancestor got lost at sea and ended up here in the Americas, whatever territory, Mexico, the Caribbean, Canada, California, I don't know, Peru, any place you can think of, wherever Plymouth Rock, If some ancestor landed there and bought for fair price, for over fair price, the land that you all, meaning British colonials, would eventually take over, would that somehow make the conquering of America easier on you? And would you want that story instead of the story that you have? Is conquest easier to digest if you can say that there is a previous claim to that land by your ancestors that's legitimate instead of violent? It's just a question. I'm not trying to be controversial. Peace, like, subscribe.